There was a time before phones and TV, where computers and such had still yet to be. Entertainment as such came in different ways, stories and songs and numerous plays. Acrobatics and jokes, all part of the show, through summer's harsh heat and the long winter's woe. To those of such talent could find an investor and take up some work as a noble's court jester. As mad as it sounds, and I swear it's correct, but to be a court fool was a role of respect. Although I suppose that such entertainment, being all that they had, was deserving of payment. One such performer was generously paid to perform for one house for over a decade. Roth was the name of the nobility, a proud minor house of stability. Though the Roth family are no longer here, lost to the ages like so many, I fear. It's too hard to say what caused their downfall, so many disasters I can scarcely recall. But that's not for now, nor of what I speak. I tell of a jester of abnormal physique. This particular chap left some feeling nervy, but most had adored that fool Topsy-Turvy. His jokes and his stories and singing impressed, but what set him apart was how he moved and dressed. Bright-coloured clothing, like a medieval clown, it would look all the same even if upside down. But more to his act was how he would move, contorting and twisting in a way quick and smooth. He'd flip and he'd jump off walls and off floors, and he'd walk on his hands as well as all fours. All of the while, performing each task, he bore on his face an upside-down mask. He'd move around court, making jokes and demands, amusing spectators as he walked on his hands. The joy he would bring, his employment paid off, good fortune he owed to the gracious Lord Roth. Until the day came, Lord Roth was succeeded by a son who saw morals as weakness not needed. This cruel young lord had often tormented those under his reign. He was truly demented. It wouldn't take much to encourage his ire, one step out of place and the end could be dire. He'd choose anyone whom his hatred would fester, and on one fateful day he had chosen the jester. Demanding a show, Topsy had to contort as much as he could before the Lord's court. Bending and twisting like never before, but the young Lord commanded the jester do more. Poor Topsy-Turvy could no longer bend, and at this admission it spelled out his end. More entertainment the young lord entices when some of his soldiers brought in some devices. They clasped to the fool arms, legs, and his head. Slowly they turned, despite how he pled. More and more pressure, limbs broke in a snap, his head forced to move until it fully snapped back. Despite the disgust, there came no protester. There was no defense for the now deceased jester. Somewhere on the grounds of the once noble estate rests a withered gravestone carved out of old slate. On this little plot of an undisturbed heath, the remains of poor Topsy lie buried beneath. A dull grave for one whose career was of jest, but at least within here, in peace he may rest. Or so you might think, given that he is dead, but it seems this dear chap had his own plans instead. Tales emerged over centuries past of a tormented soul which continued to last. People who've stayed on the old castle grounds have reported strange feelings and ominous sounds. When daylight does shine, your senses will flare, while you explore the castle as much as you dare. Whispers will echo and move through the air, doors open unaided will raise up each hair. You'll wander the halls, stuck feeling a chill, all of the while the castle is still. But the truest events of horror and fright are saved when the day retreats from the night. The still and the quiet, a peaceful keepsake, then dull little thuds and the silence would break. A cracking of sorts will snap through the air. To a curious mind, a question will flare. The source of this sound, I suppose I must follow. To brush this aside was too hard to swallow. Somewhere in the castle, the source could be found. The brave or the foolish would follow this sound. They wandered the halls, the sound it grew loud. They struggled to see in night's heavy shroud. But then they would stop, as it now became clear. The source of the noise would shortly appear. What came into view was a sight that abhors, a scurrying corpse that moved on all fours. When twisting his head, a crack would ring out, the same with his limbs as it shambled about. The harrowing mask, his mouth grinning wide, where two pearly eyes were shining inside. Standing upright, his head slowly spun. Most who were smart then started to run. Sprinting as fast and as far as they could, screaming for help that did little good. Why waste the breath on such desperate speech? Save it for running as he comes within reach. Those who looked back would be more scared to find, no matter their speed, he was not far behind. That scrambling body still focused on chase, the nightmarish mask and its monstrous face. The faded old clothing all torn up and stained, revealing his bones and what flesh had remained. That scrambling run, like that of a child, the crack of his limbs as he moved oh so wild. Topsy outstretched his hand, though it's more of a claw, while still charging on, just gnashing his jaw. This harrowing chase is too much to define, but for better or worse came the end of the line. Some had got lucky and escaped from the fray, but those who were caught, it would end the same way. Found twisted, misshapen in a nightmarish glory, yet one other victim to add to this story. The wise will sit tight and stay in their room, avoiding the halls where a presence does loom. You'll first hear the sound of snapping and cracks, then several light thuds as he quickly makes tracks. It's tempting to look, an ill-advised plan. Stay where you are, lock the door if you can. Go check the windows and lock them up tight, an extra precaution for this evening's plight. The still of the night, not a sound to be heard, but the silence is broken as something has stirred. Those dull little thuds just echo around, no sign at all of where they are bound. Louder they get on his darkened endeavor, where just a few seconds can feel like forever. A jovial laugh to add to your fear, knocking and snapping, it draws ever near. To enter the room, he might just implore, whatever you do, don't answer the door. Stay calm, don't respond to this harrowing din, and pray Topsy-Turvy can't find his way in. Good day, I'm Jar19 and thank you for listening. So what did you think of Topsy-Turvy? Hopefully it will have you considering the late residents of your castle, assuming you have one. Nothing quite like an undead jester, eh? I've had this idea for a masked contortionist running around after people, all twisted and creepy looking for a while now. What do you think? Would you stay the night in a castle knowing Topsy-Turvy was roaming the halls? Food for thought. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then perhaps subscribe, leave a like, and if you're feeling particularly cheeky, maybe even a comment. I do hope that you'll join me again. Stay safe, sleep well, but remember, here we make monsters.